Imagine two people with nearly the same diet and the same activity level. One barely carries any fat around their midsection. The other carries most of it right in the stomach, even though nothing else about their routine looks dramatically different. Same effort, different result. That gap is not explained by willpower or discipline. It comes down to one hormone and how belly fat specifically responds to it in a way that fat stored anywhere else in your body simply does not. Most people trying to lose belly fat are solving the wrong problem. They focus on the fat itself, cutting calories, doing crunches, trying to target it directly. But belly fat is not the problem. It is the result of a signal your body keeps receiving. Until that signal changes, the fat stays. Today, we are covering both sides of this. Why your body stores fat in the belly in the first place, what keeps that process running, and specifically, what it takes to reverse it. Why the belly specifically? Not all fat is the same. The fat just under your skin on your arms, thighs, or hips is relatively passive. It stores energy and doesn't do much else. Visceral fat is different. It sits deep inside your abdominal cavity, surrounding your liver, pancreas, and intestines. Unlike surface fat, it is metabolically active. It produces inflammatory compounds that affect how your body regulates blood sugar, hunger, and energy levels. But here is the detail most people never hear. Visceral fat has up to 4 times more cortisol receptors than fat stored anywhere else in your body. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. Your body releases it when it perceives a threat, whether that's physical danger, sleep deprivation, emotional pressure, or a blood sugar crash. When cortisol rises, your body shifts into conservation mode. It slows digestion, it preserves energy, and it stores fat, preferentially in the belly, where those cortisol receptors are most concentrated. This is why people under chronic stress often carry weight specifically around their midsection, even when their overall diet is reasonable. The belly is not collecting fat randomly, it is responding to a signal. The storage loop. Here's where it becomes a cycle. Cortisol doesn't just direct fat toward the belly, it also triggers the release of insulin, your fat storage hormone. When insulin is elevated, fat cells are essentially locked. Energy flows in, it cannot flow out. Fat burning becomes biologically impossible while this is happening. The sequence looks like this: work pressure, a bad night's sleep, skipping a meal, or even intense exercise without proper recovery. Cortisol rises, insulin follows. Visceral fat absorbs the signal through its cortisol receptors and stores the energy. And because visceral fat is inflamed and chemically active, it generates more stress signals of its own, keeping cortisol slightly elevated even after the original trigger is gone. This is the loop. Cortisol drives storage, storage creates inflammation, inflammation keeps cortisol elevated, and over time, the belly becomes more resistant to change. What feeds the loop? The difficult part is that the modern lifestyle feeds this loop constantly, often without people realizing it. Poor sleep is one of the strongest drivers. Even one night of disrupted sleep raises cortisol measurably the following day. Research shows that people who consistently sleep less than 6 hours carry significantly more visceral fat than those sleeping 7 to 9, regardless of how much they eat. Chronic low-grade stress does the same. It doesn't need to be dramatic. Ongoing deadlines, financial pressure, unresolved tension, these produce the same hormonal response as a physical threat, just at a lower level and sustained for much longer. Refined carbohydrates spike blood sugar rapidly. When blood sugar drops shortly after, your body treats it as a stress event and releases cortisol to compensate. For many people eating a standard modern diet, this happens multiple times a day. Long periods of sitting reduce insulin sensitivity. Active muscles absorb glucose efficiently and help stabilize blood sugar. When they are inactive for hours, that regulation weakens and the storage cycle has more room to run. None of these individually cause a serious problem. Together, running simultaneously and continuously, they keep the loop active almost around the clock. How to remove it? Here is the important part. Because visceral fat is driven by the cortisol loop, removing it requires targeting that loop directly. Not just burning calories, not just eating less. changing the signal. Sleep first. This is not a soft recommendation. Sleep is the single most powerful intervention for visceral fat specifically. During deep sleep, cortisol drops to its lowest point of the day. Insulin sensitivity resets. The body finally has the hormonal conditions to access and burn stored fat. Studies consistently show that improving sleep quality reduces visceral fat volume even without changes to diet or exercise. 7 to 9 hours in a dark, cool room with a consistent bedtime is not optional if visceral fat is the target. The right kind of exercise. Not all exercise sends the same signal. Vigorous aerobic exercise, the kind that gets you genuinely breathless, triggers a strong release of adrenaline. Visceral fat cells are highly sensitive to adrenaline. When it spikes, those fat cells release stored energy into the bloodstream to be burned as fuel. This is why cardio outperforms targeted ab work for belly fat by a significant margin. The goal is not to exhaust yourself. The goal is to elevate your heart rate enough that having a full conversation becomes difficult. 3 to 4 sessions per week of 30 to 45 minutes each is enough to see measurable results over time. Lower intensity movement, like daily walking, works through a different mechanism. It does not spike adrenaline strongly, but it consistently lowers cortisol and improves insulin sensitivity over time. Think of vigorous cardio as the direct attack on visceral fat and regular walking as reducing the signal that keeps putting it back. Stabilize blood sugar. Every time your blood sugar spikes and crashes, your body releases cortisol to manage it. Reducing how often that happens reduces how often the storage signal fires. The practical shift is straightforward. Replace refined carbohydrates with slower ones. White bread, sugary drinks, and processed snacks cause rapid spikes. Whole grains, legumes, and vegetables release glucose gradually. You are not eliminating carbohydrates, you are choosing ones that do not repeatedly trigger the stress response throughout the day. Protein also plays a direct role here. High-protein meals slow digestion, blunt blood sugar spikes, and keep you full longer. This reduces the frequency of cortisol-driven hunger signals and gives your body more stable conditions for fat burning. Manage the stress input. This is the one most people skip because it feels less concrete, but chronic stress is a direct and continuous driver of visceral fat. Even small, consistent reductions make a measurable difference. Brief daily exposure to natural light, particularly in the morning, has been shown to lower cortisol and improve the body's circadian rhythm. Short periods of slow, deliberate breathing activate the parasympathetic nervous system and lower the cortisol response. These are not wellness trends, they are direct interventions on the hormone driving the storage. The combination of these factors works because they are all targeting the same root cause. When cortisol stays lower across the day, insulin stays lower. When insulin stays lower, fat cells unlock. And because visceral fat is the most metabolically active fat you carry, it responds faster than any other fat deposit when the hormonal environment finally shifts. Visceral fat is stubborn because it is serving a purpose. Your body is not storing fat in your belly out of dysfunction. It is responding to signals it keeps receiving from stress, from disrupted sleep, from blood sugar patterns, from a lifestyle that keeps the cortisol loop running. The fix is not forcing your body through restriction and willpower, it is changing what your body is being told. Better sleep, the right exercise, stable blood sugar, and reduced daily stress do not just help you feel better, they directly change the hormonal conditions that determine whether visceral fat stays or goes. When your body stops perceiving sustained threat, it stops storing defensively, and visceral fat is the first to respond when that signal finally changes. If this helped you understand something that calorie counting never explained, subscribe and let me know in the comments, what are you going to work on first? I will see you in the next one.